the hardest topic for last, I'll say. I think love in this culture is very complicated. Would you agree? Yes. I think the last year and a half has been complicated. Would you agree? Yes. I feel like our world sometimes kind of feels like, yeah, we are moving in a direction, but sometimes I feel like things just become more and more complicated. Every day I wake up, every day I'm looking on my phone, another thing. Sometimes I feel like life is complicated. I feel like this world is complicated. And so when we talk about being radically rooted in love, I'm like, where do you even start? We have like 20 minutes. Like, how are we supposed to come to this topic in 20 minutes when I think this has been a lifelong, for the all of history, all of humanity, this has been the topic. What is love? How do we live out love? Yeah. So I'm gonna say, Greg last week said that sometimes he does sermons, he does talks where he's preaching, and then others it's for him. This one is for me. This is my first one here, but this is for me, and they'll probably always continue to be, because this is something that I'm God, I don't really get this. I don't really get how we do this in this world, and yet somehow he calls us to this, being radically rooted in love. At our house we have a few plants, and I'm not like this green thumb. I always pick out the plants that look for the least amount of sunlight, the least amount of water, and the least amount of attention. Those are the plants that I get. But I know that some of them, you have to know where they come from to know what kind of soil to put them in. Now, that's all of my plant knowledge right there. You're welcome. And still, I don't really get it. But I know that, you go and there's some that, there's different soils for a succulent to, if you're growing tomatoes, okay? There's things that a plant needs. And in our lives, we need to know where we come from and who we are to know where we need to be planted in. And I think this is where the world is slightly confused. We don't know who we are, and we don't know where we've come from. In speaking about love, I think a common ground to start is food. There we go. So, not yet. Okay. So for those who don't know, Greg and I used to live in Calgary a few years ago, and we lived with Winston. We lived in a duplex, and if you don't know Winston loves food. There we go. Okay? This is Winston's love language, food. I remember, we'll be talking about, we did this thing, and Winston's yeah, we had that really good lasagna. Do you remember? And it's he always remembers places, experiences by what he ate, okay? So whenever we would, go somewhere, and still to this day, we text Winston, hey, what's the best restaurant in Vancouver? Or where should we go? He always has this, filing cabinet of, information, okay? So if you need to know what to eat, go to Winston. So Winston had been talking about ramen for a while, and any ramen? Yes? A little bit? Okay. Talking about ramen. Now, growing up, who had Ichiban noodles at 25 cents? Okay. So that was my experience, okay? And I was I don't want to pay money for that. That's terrible. So one night we were out, Greg and I were hey, whatever, we'll go for this ramen that, if Winston says it's good, also Winston is, a pretty harsh food critic, right, JC?
Oh my gosh.
There we go. I remember one time JC was Winston gave me, a 7 on dinner today. So, we're if Winston says it's good, it's gotta be good, okay? He's this food critic. So we go and we order, and it comes, and it honestly looks like it was Ichiban with water on top. It didn't even really look like the seasoning had fully dissolved. It looked terrible. So Greg and I look at each other and we're I don't know what this is. I'm so confused. So we eat it, Was it good? It was terrible. It was so bad. It looked exactly what it was exactly what it looked like. And so Greg and I were like, okay, we're full, but that sucked. Like, that was awful. And so we walked out, we're like, that was like $10. We literally could have bought like a whole case of 25-cent Ichiban for that amount. It turned us off. We were not into ramen. And I remember Wynn's like, no, you have to try this other place. I'm going to take you, I'm going to show you what real ramen is. And we honestly, it took us a while to like get convinced to actually go because we weren't in it. That was a really bad experience and a waste of like $20 for both of us. So finally Wynn convinced us to go. He took us to Shiki Menya.
Yeah.
Okay, now, this changed our life, okay? This was a completely different experience. Now you can put this picture. This is like not, this picture doesn't do it justice. You have to come and I'll show you on my phone because this looks kind of gross actually. But Shiki Menya has homemade or handmade noodles every day. The broth is like incredible. This is the chili goma. The pork just like melts in your mouth. The egg is just like perfectly done. There's like beautiful garnish. It's like artwork, okay? This changed our life. This changed our perspective. This was, the first one we had was ramen, okay? We were full. This was satisfying. This was life-changing. This was radically different than what our first experience was. I think that this is kind of comparable sometimes to love. This word love. We throw it around a lot, but I think that it can mean a few different things. I think that sometimes we can say, I love ramen, and I love God. I love my new kicks, and I love my husband. But what does this word actually mean? Being radically rooted in love. So I went to the all-knowing Google to look this up. It says, love is an intense feeling, a deep affection, a great interest or pleasure in something, a person or thing that one loves. To feel deep affection for someone. Out of curiosity, I looked up how many songs have been written about love. You guys want to guess?
Taylor Swift has a lot.
Taylor Swift, yeah, she has a few. So, as Google is not all-knowing, unfortunately, it's shocking, I know. It says this question is impossible to answer because love is one of the most common themes in music. Thus, there are millions of songs about losing love, finding love, missing a loved one, wishing for love, searching for love, and being grateful for, etc. I think that this would be relevant in many spheres of artistic form or just life in general. I think that people are longing for love. And yet, what is love? So today we're not talking about romantic love. We're not talking about even relational. We're talking about this deep-pitted longing in our soul to feel fulfilled, to know fulfillment. Do you ever feel like you are full, but you're not satisfied? Do you ever feel like you have a lot of things in your life, but you still feel like you're missing something? I think just like my plants, needing to know what soil, where they come from, to know what soil to put in their pot so that they will grow. We need to know who we are. And in looking at Genesis 1:27, it says, so God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. 1 John 4:16 says, God is love. So whoever lives in love lives in God, and God in them. So if we were created in the image of God, and if God is love, what does that mean for us? I think that love often is described as a feeling, that we've fallen into love, that I feel like I love somebody. But love is not this emotional feeling, this fuzzy feeling. This is who we are. This is where we have been created out of, that we are formed out of love because God is love and we are created in his image. The Bible has several different words for the word love. Over translation, as it was written in Hebrew and Greek, we have one word, love. For many different ways that in Greek or Hebrew they would have different words to describe this. So I think that in the English language we've lost a lot of the depth and the meaning of what we're actually talking about. Some of the words that love would be is talking about an affectionate love, a friendship love, a romantic love. But there is a distinct word for the type of love that God displays. This is a Greek word, and it is agape. It refers to a benevolent and charitable love that seeks the best for the loved one. This is radically different than a feeling of affection for somebody. This is completely different than falling in love, because we know we can fall in and out of love so quickly. Now, this verse is used a lot in wedding ceremonies. 1 Corinthians 13, Paul is talking to the church of Corinthians. And this is totally unrelatable to our culture, but there was some turmoil in their culture at that time. They weren't getting along, okay? They had different opinions. So Paul was actually writing to the church of Corinthians, writing to them, talking about this agape love, this love that is from God and of God, and how that they should be treating each other and living out of. Paul says, love is patient, love is kind. It is not jealous or boastful, proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable, and it keeps no records of wrong. We don't have that problem, do we? It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever truth wins. Love never gives up. Love never loses faith. It always is hopeful, always endures through every circumstance. Sounds like this was written for us. Am I right? Agape love is not of emotions or feelings, but of the will and of a choice. It is steady attention to the will to another's highest good. It is an ongoing benevolence of what's good or best for another. Sometimes, if you've grown up in church, you might feel this way, and if you haven't, then I don't know, you might feel this way too. But sometimes you might come to a verse like this, and it's like, okay, now I have to be this. Now I have to be patient. Now I have to be kind. Now I have to, all this list of things of more of what you need to do. And this is where agape love is radically different than just a list of now things that you are obligated to do. Agape love is that we are first loved in this way. This is the way that God loves us. Is God patient with us? Yes, he's patient with me. He's kind. He doesn't keep records of our wrongs. Right? All of this verse is describing this agape love that God first is for us, and that we first live in this experience, and that out of that we move in. 1 John 4, verse 9, starting at verse 9 says, "This is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son to the world that we might live through him. This is love. Not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins." Dear friends, since God so loved us, we ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us, and his love is made complete in us. I ask you, do you ever feel like your life is full, but you are unsatisfied? This is the radical difference of God's love in comparison to any other love that we can encounter or experience. God's love is something that we cannot even explain to another person, but as you walk in this agape love, as you move in this love, as you live out that love, it brings complete satisfaction. As many of you know, I love South Africa. Yes. Have you ever been on a trip or had an experience that you were trying to describe to somebody? You were trying to describe like an experience that you had. I feel this way every time when I'm talking about South Africa. I remember the first time I stepped off the plane in South Africa. I wasn't even at the airport, but I stepped off the plane and I was like, I love this country. Like, I don't know what just happened to me, but this place just changed my life. I can't explain what it feels like, why I love that place. I love the language, I love the people, I love driving in the streets, I love how it feels, I love experiencing it. I can't describe it by showing a picture or even sharing a story. It is something that I say, you have to come, you have to experience this. And I think in moments like that, when people do step into that, we have a few people who have been to South Africa with us, yay. It's like, you get it, right? It's like, oh yeah, I get what this is about. And I know that many of you probably have experiences like that when you're like, oh yeah, I've heard about this, but it's nothing like I imagined, right? That is this agape love. Love is complicated, it's hard, it's messy. So in September we went to Nanaimo. My brother lives in Nanaimo, and we went to visit. They just bought a house. They had their third baby in January, so we got to visit the fam, and it was really cool. We got to do a lot of like hiking and exploring nature, and we went and saw a salmon run. Which, has anybody seen that? Yeah, a little bit. Okay. So basically every fall, like, the salmon return from the ocean, and they're basically going upstream against current to lay eggs where they were actually hatched from, which is crazy. So, if there's a video, did it show? Okay, oh, okay. So the first one, oh, you can see these? You can't really see. There's like hundreds and thousands of salmon that are just slowly swimming upstream, and then they get up to the top where there's like a little bit of rapids. You can see in the middle picture, they actually have to jump up these rapids so you can see them. They're like flinging their bodies. They're like, I don't actually know if I saw any of them make it, which is unfortunate, but you can see they're like trying to get there. They get past that, and this is waiting for them. Like, talk about a rough day, right? Like, what's so, yeah. So cute. This kind of seems counterintuitive, right? To swim upstream, to try to jump up the rapids, try to pass that dude. Like, it doesn't look like the best plan, right? But what's interesting is, as I said, salmon actually go back to the place where they were hatched from. They somehow know where they came from, and they return there to lay eggs. And it is, again, it's like the biggest sacrifice because they actually lay eggs and they themselves die. This is sort of like this agape love. When our culture and the current is flowing in one direction, we move upstream, and it sometimes looks counterintuitive. It looks like we're going the wrong way. But this is where it comes back to, as the salmon, they were birthed out of this place. As we are created in God's image, we are birthed out of love. We are created out of this agape love. And I think our hearts and our souls long to be back where we are from. And I think that this is where no amount of cheap ramen is going to ever fill us, right? I think a lot of times we try to fill our lives with cheap substitutes of this divine agape love that nothing is ever going to fulfill. Agape love is not emotional. It's not emotions or feelings, but it is will and it is choice. Agape love goes against the current of what is easy and for the best interest of another. So in a world where we are really quick to cancel each other because we disagree on whatever topic we want to decide on today, what does it look like to move in this agape love? What does it look like to be patient and kind with each other? In a world where we can be all about ourselves and trying to show off, show who we are and who we become, what does it look like to move in this agape love that it is not jealous, boastful, proud, or rude? It doesn't have to prove itself. What does it look like when others want to dig up people's pasts, to cancel them out of society's conversation? What does it look like to stand up and say, hey, I have a past too. If you're going to dig up someone's past, go for it. Because I think that if we're honest, we all have stuff that we can be canceled for. Love is patient, love is kind. It is not jealous or boastful. It is not proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable, keeps no record of wrong. It does not rejoice in injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up. Love never loses faith. It always is hopeful, always endures through every circumstance. I'm convinced that it is because we have received this agape love that we can move in this agape love. Has anybody seen the new Space Jam movie? Oh, whoa, what? Hey, have you seen the first one, some of you? Okay. So, the first one is like this 2D version of things, okay? This second one, things have changed a little bit. They've worked on their skills a bit. It's like this 3D experience, and it just kind of keeps leveling up. You have to see it. Like, you kind of think it's in 3D, and then all of a sudden, the next scene, you're like, how is that more 3D? This is what this agape love is, okay? This isn't just a thing that you're supposed to do, but an agape love is Christ gave his life for you, that you can receive and move in this, that this is the love that he first gives to us. This is how he treats us and has brought us into this place that we can move in this, and that as we then, through him, live that out, this love is made complete. And I think that this is where we find our fullest satisfaction. This is where we find our purpose. This is where we find who we actually are. It is a sacrificial love done in a way that we are looking out for the needs of others. What if we actually stopped thinking about ourselves and we looked out for the needs of others? This is something that is not easy, but this is where we need to be rooted in. We need to root ourselves in this love. This is where we need to dig deep. We need to know this agape love. I don't know if you've ever felt like, oh, I need to spend time with God. I gotta do this. I gotta do this. Sometimes that kind of, it becomes like another thing to do. But this is this is the transformational time spent with him. Now, I'll throw out a challenge. A couple years ago, Greg and I did this. We would just set a timer for 15 minutes and just sit. Just sit and listen and be. And it can be awkward. But spend time to say, God, I want to just dig into this love that you have. I want to know this love, this patience, this kindness, this goodness that you say you are. I want to know you more. And this isn't this obligation that you need to do it on your own, but it is through him loving us that we live that out. This isn't a list of things to do. So you might feel like you're here and you're feeling unsatisfied, that your life is full of things. God has an invitation for you of this love. This isn't a thing that you have to put on or do. But 1 John 4 says, if anyone acknowledges that Jesus is the Son of God, God lives in them and they in God. And so we know and rely on the love that God has for us. We know and rely on the love that God has for us. It is the soil that we dig into. You might be feeling like you're swimming upstream and you're trying really hard to be loving and kind, and yet you're tired and you're throwing yourself trying to jump up rocks, and there's bears trying to get you, or people trying to cancel you, or whatever's going on. The interesting thing is the salmon run that we were at, people noticed that there was actually, the salmon were not making it up. So they actually made this salmon ladder that they can progressively kind of step up, and it's just kind of more like stairs for them. So that was off to the side, which I didn't have the picture of. But I kind of was that's kind of how Jesus is for us, right? That he is that ladder, that he knows we're gonna get beat up in life. But he's provided this way to be come to me. If you are worried and burdened, come to me. This is where Greg spoke about last week, to rest in him. It is not on our own ability that we can make it up, but we need the love of Jesus. We need his help. And he has provided that way. That is the whole purpose. He sent his son to take on what we cannot carry so that we can step into relationship with God. You might be here and you might feel like you're kind of caught up drifting the current. Kind of get caught up on taking some people out or having an intense opinion, whatever it is. Now, here's the thing. You can have your opinions. God doesn't say you can't think, right? But he calls us to act in love. So that doesn't mean that if someone doesn't agree, that you push them out. I heard it once say that when you disagree with someone, say, I have space for you in my life. Do you have space for me in your life? Even if we don't see things the same. Spend time with someone. If you have a different opinion than them, spend time as to why. How did they come to that opinion? Where are they coming from? I know that a lot of, growing up, my grandma was really against alcohol, and I kind of was okay, whatever. But now knowing her grandpa, her dad, her brothers were all alcoholics. In knowing someone's story, you can see a bit of more of a perspective of why they have come to maybe some of the bold conclusions that they have. People have stories. People have reason for moving in the way they do. Take time, be patient, be kind, listen, instead of just canceling them out. We don't know what they're going through. The band can come up. God is an invitation. This love is an invitation. This isn't a thing to do, but it is an invitation to first know this love and move out of it. And that is where we find that complete fulfillment that we are longing for. I looked up a little bit of becoming a ramen master. Do you guys know this? I think that this is not true, but I think that the facts are actually longer, but it says it's at least a 5-year mentoring under a ramen master to know how to make it, and then it's a lifetime of perfecting it. This is a little bit like this love. This is agape love, that it is when we spend time with Jesus, when we get to know his way, when we move in it and we interact with it, and then we can move out of that. This is the agape love, that it is so radically different than a cultural current that just sometimes is based off of emotion. It is an experience, it is a movement. And as we experience God's love towards us, we move in God's love through us. His love is made complete in us. This is something you have to step into. You have to experience it. And this is an invitation to, if you haven't, all you have to do is just say, God, I want that. I want to know that fulfillment. You might be here being like, God, I'm really tired. And he's like, come to me. I'm with you in this. Here's a ladder. Let's step up together. And he might be challenging you today to be like, maybe you can be patient. Maybe there's people in your life that you haven't given time to. So wherever you are at, this love is this lifelong journey. This isn't this fast 1 hour class that we kind of master and we walk on. This is a lifelong process. This is something that cannot be explained, but you must choose to root yourself in the love, to know that life that he gives, and that he is the only one that sends.